My earliest childhood memories begin with the white mansion on Brattle Street. It stood like a monument of pride and deception, tall columns, white marble steps, and trimmed hedges so perfectly aligned they looked almost artificial. Inside, however, perfection ended at the door. It was the early 1990s in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a world of quiet privilege, where neighbors dined at the Harvard Club and children went to private schools with Latin mottos. On that tree-lined street, the Allens were among the most respected families. My father, Walt, was a partner at the city's most powerful law firm, while my mother, Barbara, a celebrated philanthropist, chaired every charity gala worth attending. Newspapers printed our smiling photos often, a perfect tableau of wealth and virtue. But inside those pristine walls, reality was colder. At night, while chandeliers dimmed and the air smelled faintly of lavender polish and bourbon, the shouting began. Father's voice would thunder from the study, followed by the deep rumble of unfamiliar men. Sometimes I heard things breaking. Martha, our housekeeper, once whispered, "Those aren't clients, Miss Rebecca. They're debt collectors. Your father owes $2 million to men you don't want to meet." At 8 years old, I didn't understand what that meant. $2 million sounded like the price of the stars. But I could feel the fear in her voice, heavy, trembling, the kind that clings to walls even after silence returns. Mother, meanwhile, demanded perfection. Her reflection mattered more than her own reflection in the mirror. She wore Chanel to breakfast, criticized the staff for breathing too loudly, and hosted soirees where she dazzled guests with her laughter, only to shatter glasses and tempers once they left. Her favorite phrase was, "You are an Allen. Act like one." But no matter how hard I tried, straight A's, piano lessons, perfect posture, I was never enough. "You're a shame," she'd say coldly, as if each word were a knife sharpened just for me. In that grand house filled with cold marble and colder hearts, the kitchen became my only refuge. The air there was warm, scented with butter, cinnamon, and the faint hum of Martha's humming. I'd stand on a stool, helping her crack eggs or roll dough. "Careful, miss. Cooking is about patience, not power." "Yes, Martha," I'd answer, smiling, covered in flour. But Mother disapproved. "Cooking is for servants," she sneered once, catching me kneading dough. "Do you want to smell like grease instead of perfume?" Still, I couldn't resist. There was something sacred about transforming simple things, flour, sugar, apples, into comfort. Perhaps it was because I'd heard my grandmother, Haley, was a gifted cook. Her recipe book was all I had left of her, pages filled with graceful cursive, notes like, "Add a touch of orange peel for warmth," and, "Love is the secret spice." And I believed her. Even if no one loved me, I could still pour love into food. That fragile hope ended on an October evening I will never forget. The sky was purple with the coming cold. I was in the kitchen with Martha, baking cinnamon cookies. Their golden scent filled the air when suddenly, loud voices erupted upstairs. "Walt, the deadline's passed. Please, just one more week. One more week, and you'll be buried under lawsuits." Then, a slam. Silence. Martha's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the oven mitts. "Miss, go to your room. Lock the door if you must." I didn't. I wanted tomorrow to be special. It was the day of Mother's annual charity gala, a glittering event at the Charles Hotel attended by everyone who mattered in Boston's high society. I had baked cookies secretly, following Grandmother Haley's handwritten recipe. I imagined the guests smiling and saying, "These are divine. Did your daughter make them?" Maybe then Mother would be proud. But I was wrong. The next day, the ballroom shimmered with gold. Strings played softly under the chandeliers. Women in silk gowns sipped champagne and complimented one another with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. When I entered quietly, holding my tray of cookies, I caught Mother's gaze. Her lips curved, not in pride, but in rage. Before I could speak, her hand cracked across my cheek. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. The tray crashed to the marble floor. Cookies scattered and shattered like glass. The room fell silent, except for Mother's sharp voice. "You dare to humiliate me? With these childish things? Get out." I stood frozen, cheek burning, heartbreaking. Around me, people looked away, unwilling to witness my humiliation. Even Father pretended not to notice, staring into his glass of whiskey. When we returned home, The mansion was quiet, too quiet. But there, in the sitting room, sat a man in a gray suit. A small badge on his lapel gleamed. Harvard Law, Estate Division. Mr. and Mrs. Allen, he said, opening a briefcase. I've located new documents related to Mrs. Haley's will. It appears that her estate is to be transferred entirely to your daughter, Rebecca, upon her 21st birthday. The air went cold. Mother's painted smile stiffened. Father's fingers twitched. From behind the staircase, I held my breath. I didn't understand everything, but I knew this discovery had changed something. My existence had become inconvenient. That night, I heard them whispering in the study, their voices low, urgent, frightened. The next day, Father's tone was suddenly gentle. Becca, want to go for a drive? We'll get you a new book, maybe a milkshake after? Mother smiled faintly. Yes, darling, let's go. It felt strange, almost dreamlike, how kind they were. We drove past familiar streets, then unfamiliar ones, until the houses thinned and trees lined the road. We stopped at a wooden bridge, old, deserted, creaking under the October wind. Let's see the view, Father said softly. His hand trembled as he reached for mine. The sunset painted the river orange and gold. I remember thinking how beautiful it looked, how peaceful. Then Father whispered, I'm sorry, Becca, this is the only way. Before I could understand, a hard shove sent me forward. The world tilted, the wind roared in my ears. I saw Mother turn away, her face pale, her pearl earrings glinting like frozen tears. Then, water, freezing, endless, swallowing everything. For a moment, I felt nothing but silence, the kind that lives between heartbeats. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. I thought of grandmother's kitchen, the smell of apples, the laughter that used to fill the air. Maybe now, I thought, I'll see her again. But life had other plans. Through the water, faint voices reached me, lights flickered, strong hands pulled me up, rough but gentle. Mariel, over here. Jackson, I've got her, hurry. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the warmth of a blanket, the sound of a woman's voice trembling with pity. Poor child, she's freezing. Jackson, Drive, Mount Auburn Hospital. When I awoke, sunlight poured through sheer curtains, the scent of antiseptic mixed with something comforting, chicken soup. A man with kind eyes smiled beside my bed. Hey there, sleepyhead. Behind him stood a woman with soft curls and a gentle expression. She carried a thermos. I'm Mariel, she said softly, and this is my husband, Jackson. You're safe now. They told me they found me under the bridge. They owned a small bistro in Cambridge, Le Jardin, and had been driving home from the market when they saw my red coat floating in the river. 2 months passed in the hospital. My parents never came. The police called it an accident, but deep inside, I knew the truth. They had left me for dead. Jackson and Mariel visited daily. They brought food, laughter, and warmth. When they discovered the recipe paper found in my coat pocket, Mariel smiled faintly. Your grandmother's handwriting, she whispered. She must have been a wonderful woman. When I was finally discharged, they asked me something that would change my life forever. Rebecca, Jackson said, his deep voice trembling slightly. We'd like to adopt you, only if you want to. Mariel took my hand. We'll teach you to cook, properly this time, with love. Outside, spring sunlight painted the Boston skyline in gold, and for the first time, I smiled without fear. That was the beginning of my new life, the rebirth of a girl once left to die beneath a bridge. And in that light, I made a silent promise. I would cook not to please, not to survive, but to heal, to remember, and one day, to make them see what they had destroyed. The streets of Cambridge still slept beneath the faint violet hue of pre-dawn. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet pavement and distant bread from a nearby bakery. Through the frosted window of Le Jardin, warm light spilled softly into the street, a single beacon in the quiet neighborhood. Inside, Jackson's familiar baritone broke the silence. Well, another day begins. Didn't forget your apron, did you? His humor was gentle but consistent, grounding. He was already at the counter, pressing down the plunger of the French press. The rich, citrus-laced aroma of dark roast filled the small kitchen. That scent, bright and bitter, had become the signal that a new day had started. "Good morning," I murmured, still half asleep. "Morning? No, chef," he grinned. "It's already service prep time." Every day began this way: laughter, warmth, the rhythm of chopping boards, and the gleam of copper pans. Jackson taught me the foundations with a kind of reverence, as though passing down a sacred craft. "Rebecca," he said one morning, placing a chef's knife in my hand, "the knife doesn't just cut, it speaks. The sound it makes on the board, that's your tempo. Now, hold it here. Pinch the base between thumb and forefinger. Balance, always balance." I practiced until my fingers cramped and my eyes burned from onion fumes, yet Jackson never raised his voice. He corrected with patience, the same patience that once rescued a small, broken child from a river. The bistro's tiny kitchen became my universe, polished steel surfaces gleaming under soft sunlight, the clatter of ladles and the hiss of butter hitting the pan. Jackson's laughter would fill the air, mixing with the fragrance of thyme and garlic. "Sauce," he often said, "is the soul of cooking. No shortcuts. Rebecca, a real chef listens to the pan, not the clock." On weekends, my lessons shifted to Mariel's domain, the pastry kitchen at Bunker Hill Community College. There, the air was always sweet and heavy with vanilla and sugar. The ovens hummed softly, lined up like sentinels of creation. "Temperature is everything," Mariel reminded me. "Kneading dough with elegant precision. Pastry is both art and science. Butter that's too warm loses its dignity. Too cold, and the dough breaks. You must feel it." She made the craft seem almost like poetry. Watching her fold croissant dough, I saw not just technique but grace, the kind that comes from years of discipline and quiet love. At 12, my moment arrived. My first dessert, Rebecca's apple tart tatin, appeared on the bistro's menu. Grandmother Haley's recipe, reborn with Mariel's refinement. When the Boston Globe called it a brilliant fusion of tradition and innovation, I cried in the walk-in freezer so no one would see. At 15, I stood beneath the glaring stage lights of the National Junior Chef Competition, the clang of pans, the pressure, the judges' eyes. I could hear Jackson's voice echo in my head. "Trust your hands, Rebecca, they know what to do." When they announced my name as the winner, Jackson lifted me high off the ground, tears streaming down his face. "You are our pride," Mariel whispered. Those years were golden. I started a cooking club at school, beginning with only 3 members and an old stove that barely worked. By the end of the year, we had 20 students from every background, all drawn by the joy of creating something from nothing. We catered for homeless shelters, fundraisers, and cancer support events. For the first time, I saw how food could heal, not just the body, but the soul. Then, fate crossed my path again in the form of Nan. She walked into Le Jardin one afternoon, poised, elegant, her silver hair perfectly styled, her Chanel suit immaculate. "Ah, so you're Rebecca," she said warmly, "the young woman who bakes madeleines just like Haley used to." I froze. "You knew my grandmother?" "Very well," she smiled wistfully. "She had your eyes." From that day, Nan became a steady presence in my life, attending every school event, supporting our cooking club, guiding me through decisions I didn't yet understand. It was she who revealed the truth one rainy afternoon, when the bistro had closed and the smell of roasted garlic lingered in the air. "I was your grandmother Haley's best friend," she said, pulling out a faded photograph, 2 young women laughing in front of a Paris cafe. "She knew you'd inherit her spirit, and her gift." That photograph became a talisman of sorts, proof that my lineage wasn't defined by cruelty, but by creativity. Years passed, my skills grew, my heart healed. Until one autumn morning, when the world shattered again. Jackson and Mariel went to the farmer's market together, chatting about the restaurant's upcoming anniversary. They never came home. The call from the hospital was short, almost clinical. A truck had run a red light. Both died instantly. My knees buckled. The phone fell from my hands. For a long time, I couldn't breathe. But this time, grief didn't destroy me, it molded me. Their love became my anchor, their teachings my compass. After the funeral, Nan held my trembling hands. "Don't close Le Jardin, my dear," she said. "Let their light continue, but in your way." So I went to Paris, I studied in the same kitchens that once trained my grandmother. Every cut, every sauce, every pastry carried whispers of Jackson and Mariel. 10 years later, I returned to Boston with a vision. In Beacon Hill, I found a red brick brownstone, aged, elegant, quietly waiting. I rebuilt Le Jardin there, preserving its heart but giving it new wings. The entrance bore the same brass sign from the original bistro, the letters polished to a golden sheen. Inside, the air carried memories, Jackson's laughter, Mariel's warmth, grandmother's recipes. Her watercolor of a Paris café hung proudly in the main dining room. When we earned our first Michelin star, I whispered to their portraits, "We did it." The second star came 3 years later. The world took notice. Le Jardin became not just a restaurant, but a story of rebirth, of how broken things can bloom again. Then, one ordinary Friday evening, the past came to dine. "Chef," my waiter said quietly, "the guests at table 7 wish to meet you." Through the glass partition, I saw them, my parents. Older now, fragile, shadows of who they once were, the people who had once thrown me away. I stepped out of the kitchen, my heels echoed softly, 15 steps to their table. Every step carried 20 years of silence, pain, and transformation. Mother's wine glass slipped from her hand. Father froze mid-bite. "Rebecca?" I met their eyes with calm. "Yes, the daughter you tried to kill." The restaurant went still, a collective intake of breath. I leaned closer, my voice low but firm. "Tonight's special menu is revenge à la maison. Please enjoy it slowly. Dessert will be unforgettable." Their faces drained of color. For once, they were powerless. That night marked the end of their illusions. Nan's 20 years of preparation came to fruition. Every document, every witness, every proof of their crimes surfaced. When the police arrived, I watched without hatred. "I don't need vengeance," I said softly. "I already won." The next morning, headlines flooded the city. Le Jardin's chef exposes attempted murder by prominent couple, 20-year secret uncovered. But amid the chaos, I found peace. At the trial, I faced them one last time. "I forgive you," I said, "not for your sake, but for mine." They were sentenced to 10 years, and I kept cooking. Today, Le Jardin glows brighter than ever, a sanctuary of love, rebirth, and remembrance. 3 dishes remain eternal on the menu: homage to Jackson, Mariel's memory, Haley's legacy. Every time I plate them, I feel their presence beside me, guiding, watching, proud. Outside the window, Boston streets shimmer beneath spring sunlight. Families laugh, lovers hold hands, and I, Rebecca Allen Robinson, finally understand. True revenge is not destruction. It is living well, creating beauty, and turning pain into art. And every night, as I close the restaurant, I whisper their words to the empty kitchen. Cooking is love, nothing more, nothing less.